Hello there, everybody. So I have changed locale. I'm upstairs, and you can totally see my altar, which needs fixing right about now. Well, but I wanted to do this video, and I needed to get this video done, and we're going to talk about some in-depth themes in this one. But before we start, a few things. My throat is a little sore, so apologies if I need to stop and start the video and go get water or tea. I've actually left my green tea over there. That was well done, Joey. Well done. And today's video is going to be talking beyond the Daisy Floof, who will also apparently be making cameos in this video. So just because I'm upstairs, I'm sat on a pile of blankets with my feet scooched under the bed until I acquire a new desk to plonk this on. I really wanted to make this video. So we may have Daisy Floofs jumping in and out. I apologize for that, not really at all. But we're going to be talking beyond the Babylon. And this began because a lady asked me to make a spell set for her. And you know me, I'm all in. And I wanted to talk about this in terms of the energies of that set, which we haven't done for a while. The set part of it, though, is going to be right at the end, and we're going to talk about energies, lessons, the channeling that happened, the experience of this, and how I feel that it's quite necessary to talk about the lessons behind the Babylon. I'm just going to call her the Babylon for this video, or Mother of Babylon, which actually came from referencing someone else, which I'll talk about in a bit. And we're going to talk about like the myth, the getting beyond that, why it matters, the lessons, the energies. It was a whole, I want to say rabbit hole, but it was more like a vortex hole of stuff that happened with regards to this that I did not expect when I began this. Looking at the energies of someone else, and actually most of the lessons pertain very much to how I feel, the state of the world right now, how crazy bright lighting it is in here. Oh, there's things moving around here right now. That's not me doing that. That's things happening around. So we're going to be chit-chatting about all of that good stuff. So actually, before we start, I am going to wrap her prayer beads around my wrist. She told me I needed to do this before we were talking about her energies, and she's just like glaring at me in the ether. Hang on. Sorry. She told me to do that, and that's my fault. I forgot. But so who are we talking about with the Babylon? Well, she's primarily referenced, as most people probably have a good idea of, in Christian mythology, where she's known as a Hu-Ar-E. I'm not going to say that word for a whole host of reasons. One, because YouTube might take this down and stop our discussion, which is why it's called Beyond the Babylon rather than the title that some give her. But we're going to have a look at that mythology first. I have it up in front of me because I cannot remember Christian mythology. It's not my bag, baby. So I have some stuff here. The Book of Revelation is the primary resource from, I believe. So let's have a look. The Book of Revelation is like an art gallery filled with pictures painted in colors borrowed from the Old Testament canvases. If you want to understand the Hu-Ar-E of Babylon, you have to go way back into the biblical story. In the Old Testament, the city of Babylon gave birth to an empire that ruled the known world and imposed a worldview upon the peoples that she conquered. Is this referring to the Jezebel, who they refer to as the Hu-Ar-E of Babylon? I'm not entirely sure. There's this crossover with this mythology, and it's all a little bit higgledy-piggledy. Those she did not destroy, she subverted. Their words, not mine. She could be brutal, callous, and proud. Sounds excellent. And she believed that she would reign over the earth forever. She said in her heart, I am, and there is no one besides me. I shall not sit as a widow or know the loss of children. And that's from Isaiah 47:8 ESV. She spoke as though a god and thought herself secure. Oh dear. Can we feel a theme already? Her destruction is announced in Isaiah 47 in response to her wickedness, arrogance, self-indulgence, and brutality towards the people of God. The Lord announces her certain doom. Their words, not mine. But evil shall come upon you, which you shall not know how to charm away. Disaster shall fall upon you, for which you shall not be able to atone, and ruin shall come on you suddenly, of which you will know nothing. And so it was. History tells us that the Babylon, I love that word, sorry, Babylon Empire fell very suddenly and was very unpleasantly conquered by the Persians under Cyrus the Great. Later, when Darius was king, the Babylonians revolted unsuccessfully, and as a consequence, they experienced many of the same brutalities they had previously inflicted upon the Jews. Oh, eye for an eye, what a shock. The Babylons themselves strangled many of their wives and children to keep them from starving to death during the siege of the capital city. When the city fell, Herodotus says that the gates were pulled down and 3,000 of the leading citizens were impaled upon the walls. Herodotus, by the way, from my memory of studying history, was not at these circumstances, and there is some question as to the viability of the history that he wrote down. The once great city, the queen of the world, was defeated, devastated, and despoiled, just like God said. Themes. Babylon next appears in the biblical narrative about 630 years later. This is what I mean, all this influx of different information. The former seat of the empire is now a village surrounded by a sea of sand, and yet her name begins to reappear in the New Testament canon as a symbol of the world at war with the people of God. Peter uses it as a sort of code. He ends his epistle to the churches of Pontus and Bithynia by saying, "She who is at Babylon, who is likewise chosen, sends you greetings, and so does Mark, my son. Greet one another with a kiss of love. Peace to all." And she who is at Babylon. Peter was nowhere near Babylon when he wrote this letter. Peter was in Rome, but he uses the word Babylon as a symbolic way of referring to the New World culture at war with the covenant community. Peter is saying Rome is the new Babylon. Rome is the new mistress who would seduce and subvert the people of God. The city had become a spirit. The final appearance of the Babylon comes in Revelation 17. In the book of Revelation, the reference to the Babylon is obviously symbolic. John is carried away by the Spirit into the wilderness, where he sees a woman sat upon, I think this is the one that most of us have probably heard of, a woman sitting upon a scarlet beast who was full of blasphemous names, and it had 7 heads and 7 horns. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and jewels and pearls. She stood all right for herself, holding in her hands a golden cup of abominations. How do you have a cup of... And impurities of her sexual immorality. Are we seeing a theme yet? And on her forehead was written the name of mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes and earth's abominations. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of saints, the blood of the martyrs. The whore of Babylon is a spirit of seduction culture, actively engaged in the deception and destruction of God's people. That she rides upon the beast means she is propped up by the forces of anti-Christian government. Just like the beast who was and is not and is about to rise, the Huari keeps on rising from the dead. My God, a necromancer. This particular brand of her seductive charm may fall into the dust and be buried by the sun of time, but just you wait, before she know it, she will rise again, and so on and so forth. And then there's some Christian scholarly debate as to what this means and all that stuff. So as I was looking at this, obviously that is the first jumping off point about what Babylon could mean. And to me, honestly, my immediate thought was, who is the goddess behind all of this? Who is the energy? Who is the spirit? Who is the divine feminine behind all of this? Because that feels to me like the same old song and dance, which is taking the energies of goddess and making her demonic and subverting her and turning her into a cautionary tale of control. And especially given the Huari, the sacred prostitute, the sacred harlot, all of that energy, and that she's very referred to in a very deified sense, even in the existing Christian mythos there, it made me wonder. I was talking to someone who knows a little bit more about the Christo myth. She was saying about the goddess Sophia, that some scholars believe it's a duality of the goddess Sophia, and there was a negative or a dark, I hate these phrases, side of her, and that's who the Babylon represented, and the good side of it was kind of either spirited away or put into good women Christian stories, right? So I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys that I am by any means an expert in when it comes to the Christo myth. I'm not. It's never been something that's deeply spoken to me for many obvious reasons. Probably most of them are quite obvious to you guys. And so for me, it was a really strange and surreal experience when the energy, as I touched onto this Babylon energy, as I began to conduit as I do, as I began to channel as I do, spoke so strongly. And I'm going to actually talk you through the experience as it happened to me first, and then I'm going to talk about how that sort of broadens out into lessons for culture, society, the witch, what I think it means. So I actually began to channel this as I was in hospital, not for myself. So I was supporting other people who, one of them had been taken to hospital, and I was there supporting in my new familial family-like tribe that I have, and I'm joyous to have. And one of them needed to go to the hospital, and so we went, and I began to channel her, and she'd been on my mind, and a few things happened. So the person I was referencing earlier, calling her the Mother of Babylon, is Danielle Dulski, who makes a reference to her in her amazing book, The Holy Wild. I'm going to reference what's in this book and probably read a little bit of this book to you. I love her, by the way. She's just everything I want to be. She's an amazing, amazing witchy woman. So I was surrounded by pain and death and people trying to help other people, but also some people are not going to make it. And that kind of, fire line, tinder line between life and death. It's a very liminal space. It can be quite a depressive space. It's obviously quite sanitized because it's a hospital for hospital reasons, reasons of health and trying to save and interfere with the life and death process, you could say. And there's still pain in these spaces. So I am going to read to you the channeling. I'm going to do a proper video for the channeling too, like a proper over the altar, speaking it as she would want it spoken. But I kind of wanted to talk about this as it kind of really drives home some of the energies that came through when engaging with the Babylon as she came through, Mother of Babylon. And I think some things are going to be really important to this. So, thy speak of sinful flesh falls short of my lips. Your scornful nature taps against the skull. My flesh burns with indignation, but not from any punishment you can mete out. Heartless is the memory of men seeking to bind and conquer and rule, to besmirch the powerful and capable, any crown forged and welded and bled for. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to touch on those themes. There's a load more of this. There's quite a lot of this channeling. So the first thing was like talking about sinful flesh, right? And I was like immediately like, this is where we're going with it. I had a feeling. For anyone who doesn't know, Chris and I run a podcast, and we have been going over lessons of Lilith the last 2 months, and Lilith has been with me for longer than that. I've said in other places, maybe not on video, I'm not sure, because YouTube is the last place that's getting updated right now, just the way of it, that Lilith took some lessons. She wanted to lead some lessons. And I guess I should probably mention what those lessons are. Hang on, let me just read to you basically the wound of Lilith that I posted. This is primarily on Facebook, but the Story Eyed Facebook page, but now it's on the blog, just so I have a record of everything. So the blog has kind of become a little bit my spiritual path working online. So I called it the Lilith wound. I've also called it the mother wound, and then it feeds into the Babylon vibration. So there were echoes through from Lilith lessons to Babylon lessons, which is why I wanted to mention it. So the Lilith wound in particular, it lays there just under the skin. And that's how I began that. And I was like, this is so close to the idea of flesh and what that means. So it lays there just under the skin, clawing at the unconscious. It lays there, a remnant of worthlessness, at the nail across the soul board that leaves us shuddering. To be cast out of the narcissist's garden, once claimed to be Eden but built on naught but lies, with the gushing wound of false hope, mourning the life you were sold cheaply for far less than your worth. I think we can see where the parallels are coming between my lessons, the lessons that Lilith brought forth, and the Babylon already forming. You have been so dishonored by men was a statement so true it brought tears to the surface when I thought the wells were dry and only resilience remained. And the sharing of such thoughts in an atmosphere of hostility that bites at women for their voices requires Lilith levels of bravado, of fuck your false choices and demands for obedience. I will bleed all over this font of life with my pain and truth, and fuck you for calling it victimization or the veneration of such a thing. My truth is holy. That's something to remember for the Babylon. My truth is holy, and it seeps with the shadows that are quite human, that will be alchemized into strength, but not yet. Not quite yet. I wept for the faces of the children that might have been, faces unknown, and celebrate the family that you unwittingly and unwillingly birthed into my life. I claim them and her with fluffy bloomers and healing wisdom. It's a Daisy Doo who's running around the house somewhere. I think she's over there. As she heals, as I heal, and none of it is yours. Shame hangs around me like a noose if I let it, ready to strangle off self-worth like you would time and again. But Lilith has some fucks for that too. There's a lot of swearing in this bit. Demanding outrage instead of decorum in the reclaiming of the inferno that burns within. Again, this is very much in line with the lessons of the Babylon. The wound is womb space splashing open with blood and fury, and void space and stars come tumbling out. Lilith grins with razor-sharp teeth and talons that scratch out all that would make me small. We have work to do. And part of her work has been bringing into the lessons of the Babylon. And there's a lot of these primary energies, which before I carry on reading some bits from the channel piece to talk about these energies that came through, I'm going to just pull over here and just read the keywords that I wrote down as I was channeling initially. Is there a dark goddess beyond the Christian myth? This dark mother, one who watches over harlots, prostitutes, and really when we think about it, prostitution being one of the oldest trades of independence and body autonomy. Beyond the veil, beyond the mystery, demonized into fear space, there is an energy of taking back power, being furious about the control and the dogma and breaking those chains that are placed upon her. So that's the beginning of how this began to come through. So we talked like thy speak of sinful flesh falls short from my lips, and there's all sorts of double entendres happening right there, by the way, which she was doing on purpose. When I was trying to create items for her, I was doing the pillar first, and she was quite mocking about a lot of it. She was playfully mocking, and she was like, no, I don't like that color, and then the whole thing just fell to pieces. And I feel like falling to pieces and being remade is just part of her phoenix-like mythos, and that is something that remains beneath the mythos that we have remaining. It's a truth beyond the surface, beyond the veneer, as we pull back the pretty tale that we're told, which is interesting because that kind of feeds into the idea of the harlot, into the prostitution, which we're going to talk about in a bit. I have thoughts on that, but we're going to go back to this bit first. So, thy speak of sinful flesh falls short of my lips. The double entendre is real, but also the idea of enforcing the idea of body being sinful, especially onto women, but it happens to us all, from the idea of something not being your own, it being property, it belonging to someone else, and the idea of kind of like a middle finger to shame and that sort of thing. So your scornful nature taps against the skull, my skull. My flesh burns with indignation, but not from any punishment you can mete out. So there may be a fire, a burning of indignation on her part, and there definitely is. There's definitely a fury that happens, but it's nothing to do with in reaction to the heartless memory of men seeking to bind and conquer and rule. That is their purpose, that is the reason of such dogma and control. Any crown forged and welded and bled for. So that's kind of talking about the female power in the Bible being demonic to people, and that came into it with Jezebel too, who is referred to in places as the Huari of Babylon, and she was a queen, and unlike her masculine counterparts, she was treated far worse, and she was a pagan queen, so she was against Christianity, and so they came for her, and threw her. She said she would be thrown from the tower and only her hands remained, and the dogs would tear her apart, this sort of thing. And there was no mercy shown to her whatsoever, and she was treated far worse than men, and she was supposed to be ruling because her husband was useless, if I remember the mythology correctly, and then her daughter takes over. And they just didn't like female rulers, let's be honest. They didn't like women in power because it goes against the idea of the good little Christian woman that we all know and ignore as much as possible. So we're going to carry on with the channeling. I'm never going to be a quiet, good little girl, so. Sitting in the energies of small is not good for us. I'm telling you, I've lived it, and that's why I wanted to read to you from the Lilith wound, because it's not a good place for us. We have to go beyond that. We have to find our empowerment separate and for ourselves. So we're going to carry on with the channeling. To speak of many heads monstrous, they are afraid, and their words reek of it. They turn my bare throat and growl, hiss between my teeth. Such dancing of naked, sanctified flesh that lays beneath and blossoms, the holiness inherent in time-forgotten priestesshood, wrapped in naught but their power, silencing the shaming shouts, rallying for justification. Pompous men with two faces pontificate as to the morality of anyone who is not them, whilst their eyes wander and their mouths smirk. It carries on again after this, but again, this is a good point. This is talking about the idea of the sacred huari, sacred sensuality, sacred sexuality, sacred prostitution, and what that means. And there's been a lot of conversations around this lately in pagan camps, but also non-pagan camps. So the non-pagan camps tend to have been trying to criticize sexual liberation and freedom and expression, trying to equivalate it with what I would call abuses, trying to make out that sexual expression is the same as, say, paedophilia, which it is not. It's really not a complicated thing to understand that between consenting adults, however many that might be, and whatever gender they might be, is a choice between consenting adults who are fully aware of their, capable thoughts and mind, versus abuses, which is not the same thing. And for some reason, we're still in a place where people equivalate rape with sex, which is not the same thing at all. Rape is about power, about destroying people. and the shame thing that happens around sexuality is a video which I've talked about sensuality and sexuality before and what that means versus the idea of shaming and body shaming. I'm not okay with that. People actually brought body shaming to Starry-Eyed Supplies one day, and I was not pleased because I stand against it. Full stop. So basically, that was a lesson driven home by the Babylon, and perhaps she was a goddess who was worshipped by those of a priesthood of a sensual nature. Within the witch community, I've been coming into contact with people who have many, many different types of relationships. And so it was really interesting to me that a lot of the people that I know are talking about their bisexuality, a lot of the pagans that I know. And I've also been having discussions with different people who are polyamorous. So the lady who leads My Red Tent, for example, is polyamorous. And I've known a couple of other people who are, but it's not something that I had ever discussed before, really. And I was listening to how different relationships work for different people. And the immediate response is interesting, because I was immediately like, I don't know that I can manage that. I don't know that it's for me. I still don't know that it would be for me. I don't know how I would feel about it. But it's interesting because I've been coming into contact with these messages of how people live their lives a lot. And to me, I'm a live and let live kind of girl. I'm like, as long as everybody's happy and consenting adults and it's all good with you people, it's none of my fucking business. That's where it goes. Like, I would have to know what works for me, and I feel like healthy monogamy is probably the way for me, because it's very, very true that monogamy can be poisonous, but then so can polyamory, and so can all forms of relationship if it is allowed to slide down the scale into abusive, power-hungry, lying, manipulative control. So all relationships between people can be problematic, or they can be beautiful. And honestly, the way that people argue about sexuality is very key in telling about where they're at, because they feel that some people feel that, you know, it's against God, and some people feel that, well, it is God or goddess, it's created, it's the microcosm of the universe. Pleasure is constant and necessary, and the balance to pain. So there you go. So there's kind of like that. Oh, I did want to talk about the prostitution element. So, hello notes. So, prostitution is an interesting place for me, because it's the talk of prostitution the way it is now, in particular, became very prominent, at least in England, and I believe this carries over really, in the Victorian era, when they were known as fallen women. There was obviously the very violent crimes against them by Jack the Ripper, which to this day is famous. And often they are the targets of serial killers, and people are pretty obsessed with serial killers. Especially right now, we're having a resurgence of looking at male serial killers in particular, because it's a fascination with the primal human mind, which has gone to a place of lack of empathy completely and lack of morality completely. And I feel like when we're fascinated with it, it's because we look at the worst versions of humanity. Some of us look at it as a learning experience. Some of us look at it as reassurance that we're not as evil as that. Some of us look at it in sort of a morbid fascination with death and what you might refer to as monstrosity. But I did want to ask, what is monstrosity, even because the Babylon herself is referred to as being monstrous. So I think that's really interesting. But how I feel about sexual agency, again, is that there has been a whole host of shame, especially recently, applied to the sex industry. And it is a place of power for some people, and it is a place of abuses for others, just pretty much like everything. And honestly, it's my feeling that if it was properly regulated, there would be a lot less of the abuses. Some people like, you make anything. legal, and it allows everything. Like, it allows the worst. It allows for sex trafficking and stuff. And I'm like, I don't think that's the case. I think that if they were protected and cared for, and there was a proper way of regulating it, and proper benefits the same way as any other job, then, and we took away the shame element and all the rest of it, then I feel like it would be harder for the people who are operating on the fringes, the people who are abusing people, to get away with it, because basically by shaming the whole thing, you make the abuses easier, and the real ugliness of it easier, is how I feel about it. I don't even feel that it needs to be attached to the shame that it is. There are some people who feel that sexuality is a normal body function, the same way eating or breathing is. It's just another way of the human expression. It's something we all need. I understand, and I don't want to say I accept. That's because that sounds really on high. I accept your opinion. No. But I don't sit there myself, so I feel it's sacred, personally. But I've never felt that I need to enforce my belief of sensuality, sexuality on anybody else. So to me, it can be and should be, and ideally always would be, a union of people, of soul and heart and sensuality and sex through the body, energy through the body, sorry. Sexuality and sensuality is the channeling of the sacred energy through the body, and a connection and union. And it can be expressions of all parts of the psyche or parts of the self. I don't feel the need to shame any particular sexual act, which is not the same as abusive act. And I know, because I'm a survivor, so I'm quite, and a thriver now. Quite aware of the differences between what abusive is and what the honoring and embracing and revelation of sexuality is. But I really felt like the lessons of sexual autonomy, of embodiment of sensuality, of power, empowerment and sovereignty within sensuality and sexuality is kind of key to this energy of the Babylon, because she's been demonized, and it's quite often to do with her femininity, her sexuality, her sexual appetites, associated with harlots and so on and so forth, and trying to basically disempower that, and so on and so forth. And so that lesson within the macrocosm, within the culture of the world today, is very telling, because we keep having all these attacks on liberations of people's sensuality, sexuality, freedoms, and it's just a mess, to be honest, in the culture at large right now. So it also talks about silencing the shaming shouts, rallying for justification, the two-faced men who pontificate. By the way she said men didn't make me feel like it was an attack against men particularly. It felt like the mankind that behaves this way. So just to point that out. As to the morality of anyone who is not them. Wow, is this on theme? The morality of the powerful is not allowed to be in question. However, what they claim to be moral is put onto you. Do as I say, not as I do. That's a real problem right now. Whilst their eyes wander and mouths smirk. Yeah, so basically their sexual behavior is the one that should be examined, and it's not. It's the Babylon, and what she represents. So we're going to carry on with the channeling and talk a little bit more about some of these energies and themes. So, speak of me in hushed whispers, a goddess of the dark, not yet silenced by slandering tongues. And when you find me echoing in hallways of ancient flame-licked gold, you shall know how to extend your body, shameless in your wanton desires, not to be cajoled by hypocrites, but emboldened by sweet ferocity and barefaced resistance. You will feel the furious pacing of my heartbeat ancient and unruly, waiting to be discovered. I'm going to stop there and talk about that bit as well, because I was like, where's the good place to stop here, Gay? Where is it go? I've lost the power of speech. It happens. I go into nonsense mode. Right, so speaking of me in hushed whispers has that kind of reverence, literally calling herself a dark goddess. And I think really that is for my benefit, the way that I perceive deity. So there's something to be said for the fact that we don't fully understand what deity is. I think that's fine. It's fine to say that we are a part of it. There is no separation from it, but also we are the universe experiencing and discovering itself in a meat suit, maybe a small version of it. Not yet silenced by slandering tongues is fairly obvious, although there is a little bit of a sexual double entendre to a lot of this, and like, well, you will find me echoing in hallways, and I love this idea of this echoing of this. The echo of the words is where the truth is and the memory is. Like, the words that exist are inflammatory on purpose, and they determination was kind of feeling to them, but the echo of them, there is an echo, a grain of truth, a grain of sand within them. Of ancient flame-licked gold, again a little bit of a double entendre going on here. I don't know what that was, but there's also like flame-licked gold. There's that opulent coming through, like you must be ashamed of your outer symbols of decoration. Now we have to be careful with this bit, right? Because there is this, if we rely completely on materialistic things, then we're getting lost in something empty. But if we're constantly saying that people can't dress themselves the way that they want to, it becomes control. And there's this weird thing that happens where, like, you want to be authentic, and you want authenticity, and when you feel that other people are doing things because they're following a trend or a crowd, or they're following what is told to be outward symbols of wealth and status, there's something inauthentic and not spiritual behind it. So again, this is a feeling, an energy that has to be examined by every practitioner themselves and really looked at as to the things that we enjoy, the things that make us who we are, and the things that are surplus to who we are, the things that are put upon us from an outside influence and expected by others. You know how to extend your body, wink. Shameless in your wanton desires, wink, wink. Not to be cajoled by hypocrites. Basically what we're looking at when other people are telling us how we should feel or what our sexuality means. But emboldened by sweet ferocity. There's a nice sort of interplay there. I like the wordplay. I'm feeling it. Sweet ferocity. It doesn't make sense on the surface of it, is it? But there's something to consider. And barefaced, but resistance. You will feel the furious pacing of my heartbeat. And this is how, you know, the way that she came through in the beginning was very much like a heartbeat. Ancient and unruly, waiting to be discovered. Together, together. Let us tear apart the lies of the falsely sanctimonious. With one simple word of truth, they will break upon my body, shattered and useless. And all the night-time children will know that they do not stand alone. So the last part is really addressing the people that she takes care of, the people who, the nighttime children who perhaps sort of reaffirming that she is happy to govern over or protect or lend her energy to the fallen women and men, the prostitutes, the harlots, or however you want to call them. So she stands for them and she believes in that. So that energy is definitely present. And this, you know, that is again the falsely sanctimonious. They will break upon my body, the body of the goddess, the body of the earth, the body of truth. There's all sorts of interplay with the words. It's really interesting. And I really wanted to talk a little bit before this video gets too much longer, about how when I was channeling this, I had picked up this in the hospital. The book fell open, and it was Pilgrimage to the Wisdom Keeper, revisioning the Mother of Babylon. And she has, I'm trying to think, what she called her a dark goddess at some point. She talks about, they called her a dark goddess, but we had heard that to look upon this witch prophet was to be blinded by a many-sun system of red planets and blazing comets of red rubies and rage. And then going looking for her, and finding her furious, which I agree with. There is definitely an underbelly of fury. I was trying to find the bit that I wanted to. Okay. Go and take it back with your bare hands and claw so deeply into corruption that you feel its black tar's heart's feeble beats in your palm. Take back the land and pray for preservation. Take back the abundance you know it to be, and feed the babes starving at their mother's breast. Find your cause and rise against my children, for the doomsday clock is ticking. Get angry, get moving. She was not the Huari they had warned us about in the churches of our childhood. She was the red-hooded prophetess, blessing in the fertile soil when we found her, chanting primal feminine spells long forgotten, bleeding on the ground and beckoning the darkest goddess to join her in awakening. She carried a lantern she had kept burning for thousands of years, a soul-warming symbol of our radical hope for a healed world. And her animal familiar stood behind her, a fearsome long-fanged wolf with blue-black eyes. The beast was marked, as they said, tattooed in its bare places with the verses of women's ire and tortured poets' anguish. Together, the prophetess and her beast were a symbol of the righteous rage in us all. So this is, as I said, this is Danielle Dulski's book, The Holy Wilds, and that was a part of the channeling of this energy that came through, because when I opened this book in the hospital, that's the page that fell open, and I was just... I had one of those smile moments, you know, like, I'm not listening and I'm being told I need to listen. So there's that. But I absolutely feel that with regards to what the Babylon represents, there's definitely that blood mystery, that old magic, that prophetess, the power and the energy of the divine feminine within the prophets and the priestess of women that has been removed, particularly from Christianity, when they try and make women to become submissive, and to the point where they are not supposed to think or feel or have sexual agency or power over their own life. It's not okay, and it's not what paganism stands for most of the time. It's not what being a witch stands for. It's not what being a spiritual seeker stands for. And unfortunately, we still live in times where masculine entities will come in and try and tell us to be silent and shut up and mock us and try and make us into sexual playthings and nothing else. And the fact of it is that your sexual agency belongs to you and nobody else. And anything else is power play that there's no point. And it belongs to you, and it's important to keep that sexual agency within yourself and speak the way that you are meant to. And so these blood mysteries, these mysteries of women have definitely been on my mind, and the liberation of self, freedom, presenting ourselves back into the world and saying, these are our wounds, look how bloody they are, look, this is the mess I've been in, this is what I've learned, this is who I need to become. And like I said, channeling her was very much taking back power and being furious about the control that had been placed upon it, breaking the chains, and breaking the lies that had surrounded. I just wondered where the floof has gone. Sorry. But there you go. I'm going to check where she's waddled off to in a minute. So now I'm going to show you the physical items. So if you guys aren't interested in the physical items, thank you for bearing with me until this part of the video. So firstly, I've been wearing these around my hand the entire time. There was definitely big pride moment when I found these charms. And you can see the beads themselves, that these are all claimed for. But I will be putting the smudge, the sticks, the anointing oil and the spell oil at least on the store afterwards, because this energy is so necessary and so needed right now. So the beads were requested a physical item. There is a gold hematite, a black moonstone, a carnelian, and a white quartz, a snow quartz. So the gold hematite is in keeping with all that opulence, really, but it also grounds it because it's hematite. And all the beads I make, by the way, are crystal based. There's no just glass beads or anything. So then there is the black moonstone. Black moonstone is one of my favorite for the dark goddess energies. It has a shimmer, it has a shine. It takes to the dark place of the moon. It takes that channeling of that divine feminine. It challenges and questions what even dark even means, which is something I do all the time. I use it for saying, you know, because it's easy to, but still. Carnelian is the fire, the bringing forth that rage, but in a kind of a balanced, channeled way of getting things done, getting action into motion. And then the white snow quartz is a little bit gentler, but it also amplifies all the other energies, and basically is the Duracell money of the rare beads. They work really well. I really like them. So then we have the pillar. As it finally got made into being. So this is the pillar. I actually pressed the charm into the wax, which I haven't done before, but she insisted upon it. So there you go. And this is a very specific red with a very specific shimmy. There are pictures on Instagram, so I'm not going to go on about the color too much, but she insisted of this merging between grays and reds, and it took 3 attempts before she stopped fucking with my mold and let me finish the candle. And she's laughing. I can hear her in the ether right now. She likes things the way she likes them. She likes to present herself as she. Come on, camera, please. Not now. Thank you. There we go. What was that? I don't know what that was. And she likes things to be presented as she likes them. So again, the cauldron. Here we go. The opulence, the governmentship, the Jezebel side of things. She supposedly met her fate dressed in her power. She did not like hide from them coming for her. She dressed to maximum effect and was like, if I'm going out by their hands, I'm going out as myself. And I think there's a powerful lesson in of that. So the spell oil is really gorgeous. Okay, the lighting is a little bit off, but again, there's a floof. Hi, the floof tail appeared. Are you having a look at the candle? Does it meet with floofy approval? Okay. But for better pictures of these last item with better lighting, pendant, yeah, for better images of those, Instagram is way better. But I will talk about particularly the last 3 because these are definitely going on the store. So stick incense. Oh my god, it's sex in an incense. It's just, it's so good. It brings up this energy of like the sensual autonomy of self, like bringing the sexual agency of the Kundalini rising into the body and enjoying your body, enjoying the sexual urge, enjoying the orgasm, the freedom, the liberation of self. And as long as that's in a healthy channeled way, we're all down for it. So, oh, it's so good. I'm keeping some of these. I made surplus because I was like, oh my god, that smells so amazing. Same scent, working into the highly scented anointing oil. It's all about, it's quite decadent, but it's not decadent in a way which is meant to be derogatory. It's decadent to a point, and it's also quite filled with fire and purpose and fury, and self-sovereignty, that kind of thing. You okay back there? You okay? I lit up your tough off loof. So last but not least, we have the smudge. Whole other level of power. It channels the energetic vibration to make the matrix of the Temple of Babylon. So it kind of channels in that energy. It definitely has a fire, like all the fire came through until I wasn't really thinking about that whole sandy aspect until I read the thing later, and I was like, that's why. But also fire and passion, because I really feel like passion is the underlying theme of a lot of the Babylon stuff. Like when passion becomes subverted by other people's misconceptions and controls and dogmas, and what passion can morph into versus what passion is supposed to be, and bringing that back to a place of self. So the energetic temple of Babylon is a little smoke, a little fire, huge braziers of fire just hanging on the walls. It's very almost Mesopotamian. It's very ancient. It's playing in the twilight hours with these great big braziers hanging on gold censers with incense in the air. There's a lot of movement of silks, a movement of bodies, the conjoining of bodies. It's quite a sensual sexual image of people who are willing and free and liberated, enjoying their bodies and enjoying their bodies together. Touch, feel across the senses and bringing into the sense of power, of wearing sovereignty and energy all of its own, of not being ashamed and refusing to have shame thrust upon oneself. But it's not arrogant either. There's a risk of arrogance. I won't lie. There's a risk of arrogance. Avalons? That's a whole other thing. There's a risk of arrogance with these kind of energies, but it's really up to you to channel and kind of moderate yourself. So there's kind of those lessons in it too. Right, I'm going to stop. It's a long ass video. My throat is croaky. Thank you for bearing with me, guys. Thank you for the lady who ordered the Babylon set. It's been a real pleasure. And that's it for this particular video. Many blessings.